interactions with. Looks like somebody said that my Twitter is muted. Let's go ahead and start that again. Hopefully the audio is working on the different streaming platforms. The person that just texted me, if you can just text me back saying whether or not you can hear me, I would appreciate that. But I'll continue since we will be posting this on Rumble. So Bards FM. It's just it seems as though every time I go on air, there is a technical problem because somebody just doesn't want my message to get out there. I wonder who. So that's going to be Kentucky, Bards FM, 22nd. A lot of amazing speakers. You're going to have Doc Chambers. You're going to have Scott Kesterson. A lot of Patriots out there. I think Brad Miller is also on the list. I'll be speaking on that Friday, September 22nd. The following day, I'll be in Wisconsin speaking at an event in Cuba City, City of Presidents. And it looks like the local Marxists there just don't really like our presence. So obviously, I'm probably going to now, originally I had thoughts of what I was going to be speaking about. Now that we have some pushback, I think I'm going to have to increase the pressure against the local Marxists just because that's kind of how I roll, right? Where there's, what is that, Newton's law? Where there's an action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, but then you add in the Marauder law, which is when there's an action or a force applied onto me, you should expect not equal and opposite reaction. You should expect an 11x escalated retaliatory response, okay? Just giving you a heads up if you didn't know the Raiklin rule or the Marauder rule. Next up is on the agenda, local event. And then September 30th, I'll be speaking down in Miami thanks to the Miami-Dade. There's a Republican club down in Miami-Dade is inviting me to speak down there, and I will be providing you in-depth summary of essentially my research of January 6th, and it's going to be the first time I'll be sharing a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll also be probably it looks like I'll be airing the documentary, or not the doc. I'll be doing a trailer for my documentary, and then by that point in time, I think I will be posting it on a platform that will be readily accessible to everyone to watch. Finally, now that we're in a position to wake up the country that is now starting to get a sense of everything that they had consumed over the last 2.5, 3 years was manipulated, curated content. And the reason why I say that, it is now official based on the Fifth Circuit Court, United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, that said that the China Biden CCP ambassador to the U.S. White House that he's squatting in was participating in First Amendment censorship. So with that said, it is now official. We are 99, maybe 100 now as conspiracy factualists, as being accurate in our conspiracy factualism. So it's good to know. I mean, obviously I had the confidence before, but now it's just official, right? So now the lemmings can catch up and realize that we were 100 in our conspiracy facts. So that really concludes basically what we're looking at over the next few weeks. Now, during that time, so this week, the following week, and then the last week of September, we'll be in 3 weeks of congressional legislative session. Now, if you look at the schedule of Congress, the hearings are not too spectacular, okay? So let's take a look at the hearing schedule. Tomorrow we have the Evolving Threats, Security and Safety in a Post 9/11 World. That's the Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Emergency Management Technology. We also have the Department of Defense Appropriations Act of 2024, Preserving Choice in Vehicle Purchases Act. So the Rules Committee is going to be going into that. We're also going to be into the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act conference where the House members and the senators confer, is what they call it, and then hash out the differences between the two elements of the bicameral legislature in the United States for the federal Congress. Now, looking at the schedule for the rest of the week, there isn't much in terms of earth-shattering hearings. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's because we have a toxic, feckless, stone-cold, coward, simp, gutless, whatever you want to add as an expletive, Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. So he's not really going anywhere unless he is politically leveraged to go in the right direction. So I would suspect over the next week, maybe at the latest by the end of the month, expect to see, and oh, by the way, please join me in supporting Matt Gaetz and other members of the Freedom Caucus to go ahead and remove Kevin McCarthy as the speaker. Why? Well, let's go through the list. Let's just take a pause real quick. Why do we remove Speaker McCarthy? Well, has he released the J6 footage? No. Was he the one that was complicit with Biden in order to remove the leverage that Kevin McCarthy could have had to release the footage, which was Kevin McCarthy fired the architect of the Capitol earlier this year. The question is why? Well, I argue that he did so that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi could continue to cover up the J6 Fedsurrection coup. Because had he not fired the architect of the Capitol, Kevin McCarthy that is, then he would have been able to keep a Trump-appointed and Mitch McConnell Senate confirmed architect of the Capitol, and Kevin McCarthy would have had the House Sergeant at Arms appointed, Bill McFarland. So then McCarthy would have had basically two people in his favor to one Senate Sergeant at Arms individual of the three voting members of the Capitol Police Board. So then you would have started to see the reversing of all the criminal referrals. But no, I think the agreement was, hey, you get the speakership, little buddy Kevin McCarthy, only if we continue to keep control of the Capitol Police Board. And when I say they or we, from their perspective, it's Schumer, Eden, Pelosi, basically the CCP wing of the Uniparty, or I should say the CCP Democrat wing of the political ecosystem in the United States, was going to be the ones that kept control of the Capitol Police Board so that they could continue to push the fake lie narrative that it was an insurrection. And had Kevin McCarthy not fired the architect, then we would have probably gotten to a point where we would have released this J6 footage. We would have proven that there was manipulated, curated content. And then we would have proven that the general counsel was involved and complicit in the cover-up with his best friends, Yogananda Pittman, as evidenced by constant and continuous discussions and evidence by Tarek Johnson, Capitol Police whistleblower. And then based on the interview and other content provided by Chief Son, the former Capitol Police chief. But no, Kevin McCarthy was complicit in that. So what do? We fire him. How do we fire him? Well, we have Matt Gaetz that moves to vacate the chair. And if Kevin McCarthy still gets the 218 votes after that vote, then Matt Gaetz can go ahead and once again vacate the chair and do so for the next 14, September, October, November, December, January. Let's just say he can do so for the next almost 16 months. What does that do, America? That would be absolutely fantastical. You know why? Kevin McCarthy's not releasing the tapes, not getting the truth of January 6th, not showing that it was a Fedsurrection coup because of his complicity, right? Not, what else has he not done? I mean, I've always argued that impeaching Biden, Mayorkas, Garland, all of the executive branch actors means that you're essentially acknowledging their legitimacy Because if you're impeaching something, that means you acknowledge its legitimacy to impeach, right? I get it. Some people still are in this mindset that they are legitimate executive branch actors. That is not the case. They, meaning starting with the Chinese Communist Party ambassador Xi, everyone that he's appointed downstream for that is illegitimate. Why? Because the 2020 election was illegitimate. It was illegally conducted at the precinct, county, state level. The state certified an objectively uncertifiable and illegally conducted election and transmitted those electors under a falsity, because those electors were transmitted based on an underlying illegitimate election, okay? And so those electors from many states, not only the 6 contested, but other states that due to COVID measures changed the manner in which they conducted their election outside of the legislative mandate through what's called election law in those states, transmitted unlawful, illegitimate, unconstitutional electors. And Mikey Pence just went ahead and brought them in. And then the Congress, because of Mikey Pence, with no quorum, illegally certified those electors. And then thus the election through the Electoral College. So totally illegitimate, illegal, right? So to impeach is not a thing. Now, I will say this. Some people, oh, it's because Kevin McCarthy's not impeaching. Okay, that's a thing for some people. For me, it's that Kevin McCarthy is not holding an actual legitimate joint session of Congress as envisioned by the 12th Amendment, as envisioned by Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, as envisioned by the process and manner in which we actually conduct an electoral college vote on January 6th. There was no quorum. Kevin McCarthy has still to have a joint session with a quorum. So for that, we remove him. Next, what other reason we remove him? Has he held a nullification vote on impeachment hoax 1? Hey, folks, I hate to break this to you, but the Russia thing, that was bogus. The Mueller investigation was then subsequently bogus. The entire operation to spy illegally, to illegally defraud the FISA court and illegally spy on Carter Page, U.S. citizen, Navy vet, to then spy on a presidential campaign, that was all bogus, illegitimate. And so what? The impeachment hoax 1, the whistleblower, right? Why was there an impeachment? It was because it was to cover for the Biden criminal syndicate. So there needs to be a nullification vote of the first impeachment. There also needs to be a nullification vote of impeachment 2. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because it was a Fedsurrection coup, folks. When they say, oh, it was an insurrection, our beloved Mikey Pence, the savior. No, it doesn't work that way, Mikey Pence. The entire country knows you're a farce and you're a traitor, okay? I'm just going to say it outright at this point now that we have critical mass of the nation seeing what I've disclosed over the last 2 years as being factual, and you still haven't defended your actions for conducting a coup on January 6th with Pelosi. No quorum, 12th Amendment violation. And then you ordered around Milley and Secretary McCarthy as though you're the big boy acting commander-in-chief. You didn't exercise the 25th Amendment. You just did a straight-up coup. And even your beloved Atlantic said that you were doing extra-constitutional activity. There's about 350 million Americans that call extra-constitutional. The way it's actually pronounced is unconstitutional, raw illegal, also known as a coup. So, having said that, Kevin McCarthy has failed to act. He lauds himself as, oh, look at me, I opened Congress up. Look, punk, that's the default. You're not doing anything. You're basically lauding yourself for blinking and breathing. Okay, great. You have a pulse. You're blinking. You're breathing. Okay, That's not very fantastical. I get it that you're contrasting from the completely lawless Nancy Pelosi, but that doesn't cut it. You need to take it to actually the minimum baseline is you nullify impeachment hoax 1 and 2. Prove to the country that was illegitimate. As part of the impeachment proceedings for the entire executive branch criminal syndicate, you use that not to, oh, we're not going to get the votes in the Senate. I don't care about the votes in the Senate. I want you to showcase to the entire country that has been censored and manipulated by this lawless executive branch and DOJ FBI censorship scheme, the censorship industrial complex. I want you to show the entire world uncensored on C-SPAN 1, 2, and 3 during your impeachment proceedings in order for the states to decertify their electors that were transmitted for Jiden and Kamala Harris, because the evidence is so clear. He is a Chinese captured CCP agent that is also funded by former Moscow mayor's wife as well as Ukraine. But guess what? You're not going to do that because you're also captured. You're receiving the same resources that 10% for the big guy goes from Ukraine that funds your PACs to go after America First candidates. Remember the last election? Anyway, with only 2 minutes to spare in the Raiklin report, I apologize for all of the technical difficulties and issues. Bottom line here, the big thing that's coming up is we have to get behind Matt Gaetz and anybody within the Freedom Caucus or the Republican Conference that is going to move to remove Kevin McCarthy. Why, you say, oh, we're not going to be able to do anything. We're not going to be able to impeach this and that. You know what? I would rather have no federal government functioning than a federal government that completely violates all of my rights and all of everybody's rights. So if you completely castrate the House of Representatives and it doesn't function, that means all 12 of the bills for funding the federal government, they don't go forward. And what does that mean? That means no one operates. The DHS no longer can censor you and me physically. Let's see here. The DOJ can't go ahead and essentially raid you and incarcerate you unlawfully. And then they can't censor and coerce big tech to be able to censor you. And then the Department of Defense can't go ahead and destroy our national security by throwing out critical thinkers because they refuse to accept the emergency use authorized products. With that, Raiklin report is complete. I'll see you guys tomorrow.